Hi, lovelies. Happy Sunday to everyone. It is Dr. T hopping in here for what? A quick minute. Today, with a little bit of a more somber note. I'm sure everyone by now has seen what's been taking place in Europe, and um, it's what brought me on today because I figured that in some ways we should talk about it. It helps to kind of talk about these events. It's certainly a sad thing to see. War is never good. Um, and there is so much loss of everything, loss of life, loss of belongings, loss of food, water, the staples of life. So many people are deeply affected. And it's something that we should all really process and not make it so much as a foreign experience that another country or another people are experiencing, but realizing that war affects humanity on some level. One of the things that's been really inspiring, if there is anything that's a silver lining out of, or not really a silver lining, but sort of a source of inspiration out of everything that we've witnessed and seen. For me personally, I have watched as a result of this platform on our social media platforms, I have witnessed really this support, just beautiful support of moms, understanding the dilemma that moms are experiencing in the midst of such a crisis. I have noticed just amazing messages being sent, words of hope, words of inspiration, as mothers together are uniting and comprehending the difficulty and the challenges and trying to really envision what it must be like to be a mother in the midst of such an acute crisis. And so I figure let's talk about that. Let's talk about motherhood in the midst of crisis. What do you do? How do you cope? And just as a disclaimer, I am not a psychotherapist. I am not a psychiatrist. I'm coming at it from a woman's health perspective, and taking with that some of the things that I've learned from my colleagues who are psychotherapists who have worked with me on teams to help moms through acute crises. So let's talk about crisis in general. Well, we know, and it's been proven, sadly, looking at the bad outcomes of specifically Black mothers in the United States, we know that one of the most consistent factor that has determined these poor outcomes has been stress, and stress specifically as a result of racism. So let's look at that. So we know that increased stress can lead to poor outcomes, so can lead to birth weight issues, can lead to the occurrence of diseases during pregnancy, can lead to preterm deliveries. All of these resulting in this underlying inflammatory state. So certainly someone who's undergoing a acute stress situation, such as one that occurs as a result of war or perhaps of natural disasters, probably something that most of us are more familiar with is the acute unexpected occurrence of a natural disaster. Stress on the body is intended to be an acute event, meaning it occurred, the body has the ability to compensate pretty effectively and pretty amazingly to acute stress. So a sudden stop in a car accident, a sudden jolt, the body responds pretty well to these acute episodes of stress. But what happens when that acute episode turns into a more chronic episode? When you have a more chronic experience of stress, is really when moms are starting to experience the effect on their pregnancies. So one of the things that our platform has really been a advocate about is self-care. And why is self care? How does self care even relate to an acute, unexpected occurrence such as war or a natural disaster? Well, if you have had the experience of self caring before, and it allows you the opportunity to kind of know how you cope well with stress, what works for you. Perhaps you're someone who needs to meditate to be able to cope. Perhaps you're someone who needs to do other types of activities to be able to cope very well in the midst of an acute stressful situation. So being able going through the process and practicing self-care helps you certainly not to prepare for the disaster, like true disasters, but it helps you to understand you and who you are and how you adapt to stress and how you are able to de-stress effectively. So it kind of gives you a heads up. You've already practiced certain methods. You've already incorporate certain behaviors into your daily routines. So it becomes a little bit more adaptable when you're undergoing an acute episode of or acute disaster or crisis, as we are referring to today. So that's one thing. The other thing is I mentioned like different types of activities that helps to cope. And again, I'm not a psychotherapist, so I'm not going to go through the details of how to perform these activities, but just going to mention a couple of things that you can do when you are in the midst of an acute stressful situation. So, for example, I know that journaling is a great way of distressing for some individuals. So, perhaps in the midst of an acute crisis situation, such as war, such as a natural disaster, where you're now having to deal with the even ongoing events, or perhaps you are now in the aftermath and you're trying to cope with your family. Perhaps you have children, perhaps you are pregnant with your first child. Journaling can be a great way of getting and releasing some of the emotions that are resulting as a result of the experience. You in certain dire circumstances, you may not necessarily have pen and paper available, and you may not necessarily have the ability to record. So, for example, some people record their journaling on their phone. So, if you have battery, you have access to a charged phone, you can certainly do that. And other individuals like the process of writing. Particularly like the process of writing, but perhaps both modalities may not be available to you. People who are truly undergoing an acute stressful situation such as war, where you don't have these um, basic basic items available, you may then be able to just have a quiet moment, away from in a corner from everyone else, depending on where you are, where you just talk it through, where you are able to talk through your feelings. I know not everyone believes in a higher power, but certainly if you do, it's an opportunity to have a conversation with a higher power, which we call prayer. Or if you don't believe in a higher power, just talking through those emotions in a quiet space can also help to deal with acute stress. And again, I haven't had the experience of those undergoing such a really dire situation as war, but just kind of going through some things that can help people even in other stressful circumstances. And then let's talk about music, right? So, music is therapeutic. We know that we have used music in a variety of circumstances. We have used music as a medical therapy, also, either to de stress or to help someone going through an acute medical condition or someone who is in labor. We use music therapy to help with the labor process as well. So, we know that music has a therapeutic effect. So, certainly, if you're going through again, a very acute, stressful situation, and you have access to be able to have music, whether it is played or recorded music or a song of the heart. So, one of the things that I've seen that's been really, really inspirational are some of the news clips that moms or women have been singing either their national anthem or singing some song of inspiration while they're going through this war crisis. So, music, whether it is recorded music that you're listening to or a song of the heart, can be a way of coping with acute stressful circumstances. So, again, we talked about journaling, we talked about music, and let's talk about meditation. So, some people actively practice meditation, and if you are of that individual where you know how to meditate, you can utilize meditation in the moment of stress. And certainly for moms, it's been really hard to watch moms having to say goodbye to not only their husbands, but their fathers. and sometimes their husbands, fathers, and sons, and taking the other younger children with them to a place of safety. So that my heart goes out to them tremendously. It's so heartbreaking to watch. It's so heartbreaking to see what they're going through. But hoping that some of these efforts will, if not help them during these acute crises, help someone else who may have in the future some type of acute crisis that they're going through. So again, knowing how you cope with stress, music therapy, journaling, meditation. And then let's talk about some practical things that women should be aware of. So, what if you're pregnant and you are going through a natural disaster? What if you're pregnant and you're going through war? What do you do? So one of the things that's really important, if you know that there's an impending circumstance coming up, so an impending disaster, one that at least gives you enough timing to gather supplies. So some natural disasters, such as hurricanes, are predictable, right? To a certain extent, they get forecasted, and you get a warning that they're coming. So if you are pregnant, making sure that when you're able to gather enough water, so hydration is truly important for pregnancy, not just for pregnancy, but for all individuals. So making sure you have an adequate supply of water, an adequate stock of food. But let's say the food is limited, because we remember what happened in the beginning of the pandemic. There was this real pandemonium, and everyone grabbed everything at the grocery store, and food actually became a concern. So making sure, if you're not able to gather enough food supply, perhaps looking at things as supplements. So supplement drinks are really important, because they can give you sufficient calories when you aren't able to gather enough food. So being able to have access to supplement drinks may be a lifesaver, and making sure that it's the regular supplements, not the ones that have added things to it, because not everything that is natural is necessarily safe for pregnancy. Making sure there aren't additional excessive nutrients in it, like vitamin A. We know an excessive amount can be harmful. So, just a regular supplement that just gives you those healthy calories that you're able to sustain the pregnancy. So, being able to gather those things when you know that there's an impending disaster coming is really, really helpful. And also your prenatal vitamins. So, I always tell my patients, don't wait till the last minute to restock in your prenatal vitamins, and making sure that prenatal vitamins include your vitamin D. Because if you are hunkered down because of a disaster, you want to make sure that you have that vitamin D um, sufficiently in your body for a number of things: immune system, stress, immune system, bone health, dealing with it's been linked to depression, it's been linked to a variety of things, your energy level. So, making sure that that's also included. So, having a stock of your prenatal vitamins is hugely important, so that if you are in a mode of crisis, you are able to at least have those supplements available to you. So, making sure you have water, food if possible. If limited on food, making sure that you are able to gather supplement drinks, as an example, to keep those calories and keep those nutrients going. And then also making sure you have enough prenatal vitamins and important supplements that you routinely take during your pregnancy, available during the midst of a crisis. And then let's talk about how do you, if you don't have immediate access or can't uh, be able to reach your thank you so much. If you can't be able to reach your medical doctor or your health team, how do you know and be able to assess the health of your pregnancy? So, one of the things we talk about during pregnancy is fetal movement, right? So, being able to make sure that you're detecting that the baby is moving at a routine, whatever is routine for your child. We know every child is different. I've had some moms say, "This baby moves less than my last child," or "This baby is all over the place. My last child was so calm." So we know that fetal movement is really key in one of our basic ways of assessing the health of a child. So being able to track fetal movement, your kick, what we call fetal kick counts on a daily basis for at least an hour. Check to make sure that you're feeling the baby move at least 10 times within that hour. And if not, getting up, drinking something cold, walking around for a little bit, and doing it again. And if you're not feeling the appropriate amount of fetal movement, making sure you're able to, if you have access to medical care, being able to at least be able to seek that when you're detecting that the fetal movement is decreased. So, fetal movement is really an amazing way for moms to be able to detect the health of their baby. And once that baby is moving, you are doing really well. We can't tell a lot of other things. We won't be able to tell blood pressure and other parts of your health, but this very basic information is really key in assessing, in reassuring us of the health and the health status of a child in utero. And then the other thing is also knowing the position of your baby, right? So starting to feel and log, where do I feel kicks? Where do I feel like I'm feeling those strong kicks? Where am I feeling the hardness of the head of the baby? So being able to touch your stomach and being able to feel the different movements of the baby. And being aware, especially if you're towards the end of your pregnancy, of where the position of the baby is, so that at least you know if you feel the baby's head down, and you're able to really accurately detect that. And there are ways to do this, and different websites where you can actually look up, how do I detect my own the positioning of a baby, or perhaps your family member, your husband, if your husband's with you, can help you really be able to determine the positioning of the baby. So these are really key, important, just basic tips. And there's not much more we can do when we're in acute crisis, when we're in the midst of a war. But there are some things, and I want women to feel that you still have the power over your health, even in the midst of a natural disaster, even in the midst of of a humanitarian disaster like war. You still have very basic ways of being able to sustain your health, detect how well your child is doing, and be able to thrive even in the midst of an unexpected disaster like war. So again, our hearts go out to the moms, our hearts go out to the women who are having to say goodbye to their husbands, their sons, and in some cases their fathers as well. During the midst of this disaster, our hearts go out to them. And we're hoping that everyone is able to contribute in some way to support when there's a humanitarian crisis. You guys know that humanitarian crises are key to my heart. So I had to take some time to process. And that being said, how do you deal with kids in the midst of this? One of the things that I saw that was really inspiring is that the women are utilizing different games. So making a game out of, I know it sounds really weird and kind of unfathomable that you would make such disasters into a game, but they have been able to help the kids deal with the disaster by making a game out of the sound of the bombs, out of the sound of gunfire, so that the kids know when they need to go into a position of safety, that it becomes a game. So making a game out of those types of situations, these are survival tools, you guys. I mean, this is really the bare bone of survival. So if you don't have the games available for kids to keep them occupied, making a game out of their situation, and then also to having conversation with the kids. You know, as much as I talked about meditation for the moms, also allowing for that verbal communication for the kids, allow them to be able to express how they're feeling, how they're processing the experience as well, is another way of coping during these circumstances. So I hope this information was helpful for you. I hope we all never have to have this experience. And again, our hearts and our prayers go out to the moms out there who are having these experiences. And we hope that in some way their natural instinct will certainly kick in. And we believe that, right? Because as women, we have incredible instinct. And certainly when you're in that mode of survival, those instincts kick in. So we're sending our prayers, we're certainly sending our love, and in some of us, we're sending our funds to be able to support these women, these moms, as they try to help their children, these pregnant women as they try to survive a crisis, and certainly for the men that they have had to leave behind, and the women. There are women who have chosen to stay behind to fight. So our prayers and our thoughts go out to them. And I'm hoping we never all have to experience any type of crisis, even near that, or the natural disasters that have occurred across our own country. But if we do, here, follow these tips, review these tips so that you have your survival. We talk about having preparation bags and sort of survival bags ready. Well, this is your emotional survival bag. So consider this your survival tips that you can utilize and use if you are in, God forbid, a crisis situation. So thank you guys for joining on with me today. I appreciate your presence. I feel your presence. Thank you for your comments. And once again, I say to you guys, do what I had to do. I had to give myself a break as I watched the news. Though I'm so in tune with human crisis, and that's something that really draws close to my heart. I had to take a mental break from watching the news and watch something that helps me to take that break and emotionally process watching what's going on in the world today. So it's a crazy world out there. You guys love your loved ones, stay close, stay healthy mentally, physically, and I will see you again next month for another live. We will be back. For those who are avid followers, we thank you so much for supporting us. We've had a couple of transitions in the last month. We will be back with our panel discussion next month. You do not want to miss these conversations. Again, there's a lot going on in the world today, and we have some really interesting topics coming up, and we are excited to really explore these topics with you. So thank you once again for joining on, and I will see you once again on our next live. Love you guys. Have an amazing day today. I have an event to go to. My girlfriend is going kill me if I don't get going. So I will see you guys next week. I do have to go. I love you guys. Thank you so much for supporting. Have a wonderful Sunday.